Nowadays, when you hear the name OJ Simpson, there's just no way that you think of the football player who dominated the running back position in the early 1970s. And if you haven't been asleep for the last 30 or so years, you would know that OJ Simpson went to trial for the double murder of his ex wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. And everything surrounding this trial, including OJ not showing up to court and going on a low speed chase in the white Ford Bronco, as well as the eventual trial, where OJ was ruled not guilty on both counts of murder, became some of the most iconic pop culture moments in American history, and for all the wrong reasons. And OJ did end up going to prison for a robbery that took place in late 2007, but many people who are not old enough to remember the OJ Simpson trial mistakenly think that this prison time had anything to do with the murder trial, but it actually did not at all. And finally, on June 20th, 2017, OJ Simpson was granted release with parole and was released from parole in December 2021 for good behavior. That the NFL Hall of Fame felt that they could not tell the story of the National Football League's history without including OJ Simpson. Orenthal James Simpson was born on July 9, 1947, in San Francisco, California, and was later almost exclusively referred to as OJ. He got into a lot of trouble in his teenage years, but started taking athletics more seriously after MLB legend Willie Mays talked to him and forced him to reflect on himself as a man. Simpson was all city at Galileo High and decided to attend college instead of joining the war effort in Vietnam after a close friend of his sustained a very bad injury, which persuaded OJ to not pursue that lifestyle. After dominating in JUCO, OJ was able to transfer to USC and absolutely shined. And OJ was legitimately one of the greatest college athletes of all time while he was there. Before even playing a down of football at USC, OJ ran track and field, where he broke the world record in the 4x110-yard relay. And in 1967, OJ led all running backs in the nation in yards with 1,543 and also had 13 touchdowns on that season, but was snubbed for the Heisman by UCLA quarterback Gary Babin. OJ used this as fuel and went on to have one of the greatest Heisman seasons of all time, rushing for almost 1,900 yards, 23 touchdowns, and won the Heisman by a shocking 1,750 votes. And that is the biggest margin of victory for the Heisman Trophy. It was of all time before 2019 when Joe Burrow won it by 1,860 votes. But to put that into perspective, OJ received 855 first place votes for the Heisman Trophy that year, while the other 8 players that received votes for this award that year had a combined 147 first place votes. And at the end of it all, it was not even a question of who would be drafted first in 1969. And the Buffalo Bills did end up getting the pick and got to draft OJ with the first pick. The teams trying to do nowadays, but at that time, this was not ideal to OJ's playing style. And after only putting up 1,800 yards through 3 years, OJ finally broke out in his 4th season, after new head coach Lou Saban decided to put more emphasis on OJ as the main running team. And what OJ did the very next year might never be done again, as in 1973, OJ Simpson rushed for 2,003 yards and 12 touchdowns, averaging a ridiculous 143 yards per game, which is still the most of all time to this very day. All time. For the next few years, OJ continued to dominate and put up over 1,000 yards every single year, including his 1975 campaign, which could be argued to be better than his 1973 campaign, because he actually had more yards from scrimmage with 2,243 and 23 total touchdowns, which is 11 more than in 1973. But he ended up losing out the MVP to Vikings legend quarterback Fran Tarkenton, who led Minnesota to a 12-2 record. 1976 was OJ's last dominant season, as he rushed for 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. But just like every other year he had in Buffalo, they did not have much success and finished third in the AFC East. In 1977, OJ had an injury that cut his season short and Simpsons era in the NFL, as he was traded to San Francisco for a big haul and got to play out the last few years of his career in his home state. O.J. Simpson retired in 1979, leaving the game as the clear best running back of his era and rushing for almost 2,000 more yards in the 70s decade than the runner-up Franco Harris. And in 1985, O.J. Simpson was inducted into the Football Hall of Fame as a first ballot guy. And to put this into perspective, OJ was a shoo-in as soon as he retired, much like somebody like Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers will be when they retire. The Juice retired with 11,326 yards, 61 touchdowns, as well as 5 first-team All-Pro selections and 6 Pro Bowl selections. And he was also one of the most beloved pro football players that the NFL had ever seen up until that point. While we all know the O.J. Simpson story did not have a happy ending, and in all honesty, it had anything but a happy ending, as one of America's heroes for kids who grew up in the 60s and 70s ended up becoming a monster in the public eye and a murderer in most people's eyes. It's actually crazy how football player became a footnote in the life of O.J. Simpson, as before the trial, that was likely the only thing most people knew about him. Many people who believe OJ did do it say that he was one of the first cases you could point to and say that it was a direct result of CTE. And one doctor in 2016 even said they would bet their medical license on OJ having CTE, which makes a lot of sense because him having all those cares in a physical era like the 1970s is prone to giving you brain damage. I mean, all those hits, all those and big hits, you're getting the ball every play and you're expected to put your head down. This is before targeting, before all of that stuff. And if a guy like Aaron Hernandez had severe CTE and he played in the 2000s and 2010s, I mean, as a football fan, this man was literally the best player for an entire decade, but we almost have to ignore it because of his actions off the field long after he finished playing. But anyways, that's all I have for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed because I learned a lot while making this video. And I don't really have any opinions about OJ off the field. Like I said earlier, he definitely had some stuff going on. He was definitely a crazy man. And I obviously understand why he is not remembered by most for his football career. And we should probably keep it that way. But I did want to shed a little light on the career of O.J. Simpson and kind of how crazy it all is just because of how great a football player he was, that he ended up being a psychopath. But leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'm out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and stay tuned for more.